very easy to get bored. What am I just going to drink every time I'm like, open my eyes to the time I go to sleep? And that's actually where it ended up going was, I wouldn't drink to black out very often. That had to be kind of a special circumstance of some sort of, party or various things. But
Awekenge, this is Mental Mythos, hosted by Asekho Toto.
I would like to say also thank you so much for being here. And I feel like conversation around addiction is quite important. And our conversation today will be able to actually, in a way, educate the audience about how it really affects your mental well-being and also your life in general. And I feel like addiction has this thing of taking away your identity and not actually knowing what you want. And you will become in this soul of addiction and end up not wanting to come out. So with those words, I would like to welcome you to Mental Mythos. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And as I said, in terms of you mentioned on the file that you have been addicted. You were addicted with alcohol for 15 years and with meth for 5 years. So can you take us through that? What actually initiated triggering you in terms of being addicted to alcohol?
Yeah, so I had, I would say a picturesque upbringing, what a lot of parents wish they could give their children, which is a lot of financial stability. I never wanted really for anything, every Christmas was the best day of the year, just kind of your picturesque upbringing. But it also came with pitfalls in the sense of when you make life too easy for your children and they don't learn how to problem solve themselves, because once things get difficult and they ask for help and you help them immediately, I found out later, it really robs them of their self-esteem because they don't build confidence by problem solving themselves and having this confidence. And, obviously I am grateful for my amazing childhood. And definitely don't wish to talk bad about my upbringing at all. But there's always another side to life. So if I had a really good upbringing, I did not have experience dealing with life once it started coming at me. And so I would say, I started drinking in high school on weekends, and there were also some social inferiority complexes that I had that I wasn't aware of, that I was inadvertently using alcohol to mask. I think every child has to go through these processes of understanding themselves, of being comfortable with themselves. And I just never put in the work to do that. I would mask my insecurity with alcohol. And so it started this decades-long cycle of masking pain and of essentially stunting growth. And I would, it went from drinking on weekends to, once I started going to college, drinking daily. And my schooling was always, my grades were always okay. But there were times where I'd be drinking wine in like a film class or something. So, and a lot of that had to do with maybe boredom. School can sometimes be boring. So I kind of learned from my early adulthood to use alcohol for boredom, which we're modern day Americans. All of our content is coming at us so quickly that it's very easy to get bored. What am I just going to drink every time I'm like, open my eyes to the time I go to sleep? And that's actually where it ended up going was, I wouldn't drink to black out very often. That had to be kind of a special circumstance of some sort of, party or various things. But I was drinking from, first thing in the morning, just sipping wine throughout the day, to mask any of the small little distresses of life. I'm in the sales world, so I spent years in phone sales, in a call center, banging phones, getting credit cards, trying to sell advertising. And yeah, any minor frustration I would have, just drink that away. Any small little in therapy, I learned they call it distress intolerance. I have stronger words for it. I'm being a pansy. I was just being a pansy. I didn't want to deal with any minor distresses of life, whether that be boredom or frustration, anger. I would just drink. If I got angry, I would just have a beer, and it would work. That's kind of the downside of the one thing if you're trying to mask your pain and it's not working. But the thing about addiction is a lot of times it does get rid of your pain. So, but that's only temporary.
Yeah.
So really, my drinking started early on because I hadn't had to deal with the, everyday stresses of life. So when breakups started happening in college or getting behind on bills, it would send me into a downward spiral that, and I would just check out, because I always had a financial safety net. So I just never really learned the lessons of an early adulthood that you're really supposed to. That's kind of how it all started, at least with alcohol.
And that's how, actually, I believe that's how it starts in terms of, you start by socially drinking, things that you don't go doing, things like addiction. Actually, addiction is something that you don't even think about when it comes to when you start drinking alcohol. Also, I used to drink, actually, started drinking sober this year. I started to drink in a way just to numb the pain, just to have fun. But one thing that as much as I kept on drinking, it became this thing of I'm no longer drinking for fun. I'm drinking for something else. And I could feel it with myself and realizing that. But I never classified, I would say, addiction. And another thing that's important is that making is the life richer and not taking a look at them in terms of allowing them to solve their problems. It's something that I feel like parents should actually focus more on it, because I feel like as much as we might not agree, I would say we as individuals, when it comes to addiction, starts when we're young, and when you still that little sip of beer, that sip of wine, thing that won't have any effect of you. And so same thing with drugs, same thing with cigarettes. In terms of that's how addictions on our view on how they're developed. And also another thing that whilst you were talking, I actually kind of to remember is the fact that sometimes there are some times that I had difficulty in terms of sleeping in general. And one thing that I realized the fact that let me buy a bottle of wine and I drink it and I'm able to sleep well. And I saw that as something that's quite dangerous, and it's quite, in some way, slowly but slowly I was becoming, I would say, an addict in a way, but
dependent.
Yeah. Fortunately for me, I was able to say to myself, this is not right. I can do better than this. And my next question was you mentioned that you started mastering non-negotiable habits. And honestly, starting those habits, it's not easy. It's quite hard in terms of starting new habits. And myself, I'm in the process of starting new habits and able to should actually just be myself in terms of realizing that when I start this habit, and I know that at the end of the day, they would have a positive effect on me. So in the midst of you starting those healthy habits, what challenges did you come across?
Yes, so implementing them to work as kind of like a Power Ranger, like combined force, was not overnight. It was implementing one at a time. And it started, it certainly started with the pain of staying the same being greater than the pain of changing. So I knew that the first thing I needed to change was, I'd started doing methamphetamine. I had always, I'd been diagnosed with ADD early on at the age of 5. So I was on Adderall from the age of 5 to 14. And so there was an element of telling myself that meth was helping me in some way. And in some regards, I would sit down and obviously do the same thing for 16 hours, but that's not really an actual you can't really say that, oh, that's helping my ADD because it's it's going to have more effects on your focus later. So anyways, methamphetamine is such a nasty, poisonous, brain destroying drug. Obviously alcohol is too. It's one of the most toxic things as well. But so I knew that was the main thing I needed to stop. So when I started implementing these daily habits of waking up early at 4 a.m. Now I wake up at 3:30 a.m., but it was a process to, find my wake up time. Waking up early, daily weight training, reading self-development material, which I'd never really tried doing. I'd been a reader, but I always liked fiction, so I'd never really read a self-help book. Tracking macronutrients, and then dropping all vices. So those are the 5-1: early wake up, weight training, macronutrients, self-development material, and dropping vices. But the first one that I started implementing were waking up early and weight training. And I wouldn't beat myself up if it wasn't perfect, because when I was just starting the process, I didn't know what the best process is. So, I'm just trying to be better. So I'm waking up early, I'm weight training and starting to eat healthier foods. But I was still drinking at the time. So that had actually really helped to get off meth, because those withdrawals are so, it's depleting your brain so much of producing dopamine and serotonin and endorphins that you need to do something to handle those withdrawals. Otherwise, in my eyes, you're setting yourself up for failure. So once I was weight training, I was producing I was producing a lot of endorphins in my brain. So I was starting to feel much better. I started to feel more normal, but I was still drinking, and I was okay with that. I was starting to implement more and more discipline into my life. I would still miss a workout here and there. In fact, even after I started to feel better, I missed 2 days of workouts in a row. And by the end of the second day, I was already suicidal again. So that really helped me understand, okay, now I know this really works. And so I just started missing fewer and fewer things. And it got to a point where I was feeling great. I was still drinking. I was waking up early though, but I would go to bed, let's say at midnight, having been drinking, and still wake up at 4 a.m. And I just was obviously not feeling good. And so even after 15 years of what I could say is alcoholism and calling myself an alcoholic, really, after implementing these daily habits, I actually got to start acting towards preference, where, I knew I was going to wake up early. That was becoming non-negotiable. And I was okay with still drinking, but I was just not feeling as good as I knew I could and knew I wanted to. So I literally just, after this one last night, I was like, yeah, now I know what I actually would like. And just started drinking again. And so then I started implementing more and more of the daily habits. So reading personal development material, things like, a book called Mindset by Dr. Carol Dwecker is an amazing one. That has to do with the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And I was certainly stuck in what's called a fixed mindset, where, it's everything from thinking that you just are the way you are and can't change, versus the growth mindset, where you're okay with your failures because you know that intelligence and positive behaviors are learned. So the failures are really important. So when you're starting to get out of addiction, it will be a combination of adding stuff and subtracting stuff. And you don't need to worry too much, at least in my eyes. Like, relapses are part of the process, because I've probably relapsed thousands and thousands of times, because there were how many days I said, okay, I'm not drinking anymore. And then I would drink that day. So like, how many failed attempts I've had? It would be certainly in the 4 or 5 digits. And that's okay. It's really important not to beat yourself up, because self-love is paramount to recovery. You just can't, in my eyes, get off of drugs and alcohol while still having a negative view of yourself, because you won't feel like you deserve to get better. If you're calling yourself a piece of shit, well, those people don't deserve a better life, So it's really important to speak to yourself really kindly and forgive yourself while you're implementing more and more positive stuff and subtracting more and more negative stuff. So, it was a process. It only took about 2 weeks to drop alcohol as well and start getting everything else dialed in. And I would say the most difficult thing for me now is tracking macronutrients. So protein, carbohydrates, and fat, as well as calories, total calories for the day. And that's based on fitness goals. So my goal is